important to remember that news stations don't always get this stuff right. I mean, we already know that, right? It's very rare that you see a news station come out swinging from the beginning, naming corruption, naming collusion, naming that people were framed. It's very rare. So this took a very brave journalist, and we're here tonight to support his work as well. So I'm going to run through the context of what happened in 2020, just to get us all up to speed. Also, just let you know, this is going to air after Monday Night Football. And if you're watching the game, you know it's an OT right now. So it's going to be, it's kind of like where it's loose as to when it's going to start. So just bear with us. We don't have control over the starting time. But I am going to make sure that it's filled with information for you, because it's super important that you get the whole story. So 2020, May of 2020, May 25th, George Floyd is murdered by police, and several hours earlier that same day, Deion Johnson was murdered by DPS. The people who took to the street across the nation took to the street in the name of George Floyd, but here in Phoenix, we took to the streets not only in the name of George Floyd, but also in the name of Deion Johnson. There were over 400 people arrested over the course of the summer of 2020. 354 of those people were arrested in the first 4 days. Many of those people with charges, they got them dismissed. They were ridiculous charges. They lacked probable cause. And we know so because some of the lawyers on this call tonight actually identified that when they went in to do initial appearances. And they went in to do initial appearances because they were coordinating with the movement to make sure that our protesters were protected and that their legal rights were protected and that they were represented at initial appearance. Had that not happened, those 124 people, 100 and some odd people who were arrested in the first within I think one of the first 4 nights of the protests, they were arrested. They were given probable cause statements that were copied and pasted from one another. So they actually had police reports that were filled out at like noon or earlier in the day, where then when the people were protested, they were arrested, they had copy paste probable cause statements. And if it wasn't for those lawyers, some on this call tonight, who went out there and noticed that when they were doing initial appearances, a lot of those charges might likely have stuck. So those 354 in the first 4 days. In the remainder of the course of the summer, 60 more people get arrested. And instead of doing the probable cause copy paste, they started to sophisticate their operation, the police and the prosecutors I'm talking about. Those folks who were charged, those 60 people who were charged subsequently, they started to get much more steep charges. You're looking at rioting charges, you're looking at aggravated assault against a police officer. We're talking about hindering prosecution charges, and then eventually we get criminal street gang charges. Tonight is going to examine exactly how those charges came to be and what kind of collusion, what kind of conspiracies that the Maricopa County Attorney's Office and the PPD engaged in to be able to fabricate those street gang charges. It's super important to recognize too, this is happening in the context of an historic election. In 2020, we were looking at the messiest presidential that we've ever had in our lifetimes. And on top of that, we had the Maricopa County Attorney's race. So when you had people out in the streets protesting about the murder of George Floyd, you also had people in the streets who were saying defund police. Sometime in September, I need you to mute that. I'm sorry, we got the streaming in my house and now it's like it's me talking double in my ear. Sorry. Okay, so
it's a different effects.
Somebody saying something? Okay, so we've in September of 2020, Alistair Adele, who is our seated county attorney, who was also running for election in November, she announces that she's not going to seek charges against the DPS officer who murdered Deion Johnson. The people in the streets who were shouting defund police started to shout drop Adele. And those of you who know Mass Lib, you know that was our campaign to run an anti to make sure that Alistair Adele does not win the election. Those people in the streets who are shouting drop Adele are Adele's political opponents, and she knows it. And soon after that, the first gang enhancements come from the October 3 protests and the 10/17 protests. This is just right after she announced that she was not going to seek charges against DPS. She's targeting her political opponents. These prosecutions, these arrests were all seeking to make political prisoners out of these protesters. So as we graduate through the course and into the election, and at the point when they do the 10/17 arrests, it reaches the point of it's the heightened point where those street gang charges hit, and the community begins in a very organized way to push back. We start talking to the media. This is when Dave Biscoming gets involved. We start talking to lawyers on the ground, and we are launching an offensive campaign to come back and push back against this. And we start to expose corruption. And those of us who were involved in that experience of figuring out what was wrong in those offices, what they were doing, I don't think any of us realized just how deep the corruption was, just how blatant the lies were, just what a circus it all was. And so tonight we're going to see it in aggregate. There were 39 people who faced very serious criminal charges for protesting, and all 39 of those charges have since been dropped. There are collateral lawsuits. There is a mass action lawsuit. There have been 4 independent investigations launched. The Department of Justice has come into town, 2 high-level resignations of prosecutors who were involved in these cases. We have one that's on administrative leave indefinitely. We don't know if she's ever going to come back. And she's turned around and sued the Maricopa County Attorney's Office for scapegoating her. You can see that story unfold tonight as well. So there are a lot of details, a lot of moving parts, a whole lot of nonsense that took place, and none of it is going to go without being held accountable. And why we need to watch this together, why we have to watch this together tonight, is so that we are capable of formulating this story as we go out and tell the world, because we are not going to take this anymore. We are not going to take this from the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, the police, or our useless and regrettable City of Phoenix City Council, who sits here and watches this. We told them for months. We had to do citizens petitions to get them excited about even caring about these civil rights. We had to kill anti-protester bills. We have had so much work on our plates, and it's been with no help of these useless politicians. So tonight we're going to talk about what's next. I'm going to pass it over to Bruce Franks Jr., who's going to tell us what's next for our political work and how you all can plug in, and why it's so important for you to watch tonight so that we can all understand the larger story. Bruce, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Word.
Thank you, Lola. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It's good to see all of y'all. Now, after hearing the context that Lola just gave, all of the corruption, the collusion, the lies, the abuse of power, the harm inflicted on those who spoke up and out against state violence, how can one expect to keep a job given to them by the people? We have an opportunity to exercise our power and take accountability into our hands. What better way to show what happens when you center those directly impacted? What happens when you have no choice but to listen to Black directly impacted leadership? I'll tell you what happens. We recall Maricopa County Attorney Alistair Dale. We go out and get 475,000 signatures in the 4th largest county in the United States. We go out there and talk to the 930,000 people that didn't want to vote for her in the first damn place. We go out there to the communities that have been shut out by the political process, but have been impacted most by the system. We go to the $1 million blocks in South Phoenix and make sure that they have a voice in this process, because we know that they are directly impacted the most by this system. We're going to take the 120 days that it takes to do so and get 475,000 signatures to get her out of office. And each and every person watching, each and every person on this Zoom can be a part of that. Later on, after you hear the hour-long special about what's going on, recapping, new things, all of that, you're going to be able to tap in, and you're going to be able to hear the action steps on how you can be a part of our upcoming political education with our Let's Talk abolitions, both online and in person, as well as our recall, because we will recall Alistair Dale.
Thank you, Bruce, for that. Patricia, Rhea, are you all checking out the game? I think it should be over. We feeling good about heading over to the stream? Anybody who is on this call now, grab your snacks, get comfortable. It's an hour long. We are going to be active during the chat today. Pop in the chat the highlights, pop in the chat anything that you think is relevant and important for us to remember and flag. Let's talk about what we're seeing. Let's process it. And then if you can bear with us afterwards, we're going to sit together for a few minutes, have a brief detox and a really short debrief so that we can all just make sure we're processing together, because we don't want to experience this violence alone and experience this violence and then just go back to our day-to-day lives. So just bear with us afterwards, stay on for the next 15 minutes afterwards, and let's regroup and do this together. Ria, Patricia, what are you seeing? Is it about time?
There's some ads playing.
Cool.
I can just start playing it though.
Cool. Let's keep the volume down and if we could, and then folks, just grab your snacks, take your bio break, do what you do, and let's get comfortable. Buckle in. Deep breaths. This is going to be toxic. Deep breaths is going to be really harmful. It's going to be really sad. We're going to know folks and remember folks who've been through this. Deep breaths.
Spaces to make your life
And remember to pop in the chat what you see
for you to stay focused.
that stands out to you.
We build more in so you can get more out of your home without getting out of your home. Pulte Homes, more life built in. Discover innovative new homes designed to make your life better, happier, and easier. To find a quick move-in home available near you, visit pulte.com/Arizona.
Also, just want to say thank you again for joining us. I know if I watch this stuff at home alone, it's heavy. This is how we've been able to get these charges dropped. This is how we've been able to do this work, is by being here together. Here we go. Buckle in.
Teen investigation. It's a story about Phoenix police, county prosecutors, and their plan to target protesters.
Specific group of individuals
They invented a gang
identified themselves as ACAB.
and lied about evidence to get false charges and silence dissent. It's also a story about bias,
liberal pieces.
about trophies celebrating violence, top officials slow to act. Why can't you look into it now?
It's passive at all.
A county attorney and a police chief who knew but did nothing and wouldn't say anything. It's a story about law enforcement officials who now find themselves on the other side of the law.
Today, we are announcing that the Justice Department is opening an investigation into the city of Phoenix and the Phoenix Police Department.
Thank you for joining us. I'm ABC 15 investigator Dave Biskobing, and we call this investigation politically charged because you're about to see people who faced political charges in modern-day political prosecutions. And we don't make that claim lightly. We spent a year investigating Phoenix protest cases, and throughout this hour, we're going to show you the proof. So first, background on the fallout from our investigation. The Department of Justice is investigating. Phoenix and the Maricopa County Attorney's Office each ordered outside investigations, and both confirmed our reporting. Top officials resigned, more were demoted, others face criminal investigation. And finally, every open felony protest case in Phoenix was dismissed. It's important to know all that as we begin, because leaders at the highest levels knew of and approved what happened, but did nothing. Nothing until we exposed it all for the public to see. A street protest, a group huddled, marching together. Ask Phoenix police and county prosecutors. This is a gang.
They try every tactic they can to inflict as much pain as they can on us.
A gang, they say, with members who endanger us all.
Threat to our community.
Listen to police and prosecutors, and it all sounds really bad.
The threat to regular, normal members of the community.
Until you see their case, see the people. Are you a gang member?
No, I mean, it's completely insane.
I thought it was a joke.
But it isn't a joke. It's real. It's police and prosecutors who critics say are out of touch, out of control, without accountability. Their response, arrests, prosecutions, all politically charged. It all began on October 17th in a downtown Phoenix park. It's where 17 people, including Amy Caper, met for a protest and march against police violence.
Well, I've been a big Black Lives Matter supporter for the last couple of years. My partner and I saw the flyer on Instagram and decided to go. It was really close to his apartment, so that was that.
Phoenix police gathered intelligence on protesters all 2020 and monitored social media for demonstrations, so officers were already at the park, waiting.
It was our first protest with this group, so we really didn't expect that at all.
This is your first one with the group?
This particular group, yes.
And yet you're now being accused of being in a gang with them.
Correct.
Alleged gang member Amy is 28. She works IT in healthcare and is a master's student. Did you know you were in a gang?
I didn't, no.
Okay.
Again, it was the first time I had met any of
All right,
these
do you have like a gang tattoo or insignia?
No, I do not.
So what gives? Well, first, here's what happened. ABC 15 obtained every video from that night. Officer body cameras, police surveillance footage, witness recordings. After leaving the park, the 17 protesters began marching down Washington Avenue. How many police?
I mean, I would say at least 40.
The officers and their vehicles in tow. To slow and annoy the police, some protesters tipped cones, toppled temporary street signs, dragged barriers. In this video, one of them released a toy smoke maker, the kind used in gender reveal parties. You can see officers drive and walk around it. Now this video is from the AZ Patriots, an alt-right group marching next to officers.
This is dope.
Cheering police on.
I'm walking right alongside PD.
The women also taunting as the group chants.
Bureau of Land Management.
The whole thing lasts roughly a half an hour. Here's a map. It starts here at this park and then ends at the corner of First Avenue and Van Buren. The group slows, huddles, forms a dome with their umbrellas. Officers move in, arrest the entire group. 10 days later, they were indicted on multiple charges: rioting, aggravated assault, obstructing a thoroughfare, and the gang charges.
Didn't even have a speeding ticket until 2 months ago, so I think I am trying to just, I haven't come to terms with.
So you've even, before this, before these run-ins with Phoenix police, you've never even had a speeding ticket?
Nope.
Alleged gang member Suvarna Ratnam was a Harvard student. She was a regular with some others in the group. They protested together before, police tracking them and building intelligence files. Suvarna also arrested during an August protest.
I've been falsely detained and falsely targeted for arrest and charged with fabricated things more than once.
The cases against Suvarna would be eventually dismissed completely and permanently because of our reports.
She's not a gang member. She wasn't jumped into anything. She doesn't spend her time terrorizing people. You don't have to worry about walking down the street and seeing her.
Ken Countryman is Suvarna's defense attorney. Ever represented an actual gang member?
I've represented a lot of gang members. I grew up in a neighborhood surrounded by gangs. The only thing I can say is that the gang members that I spent my formative years trying to avoid would be sitting on their porch laughing about this, because this is really a joke.
So what made this group a criminal street gang? Well, for 3 months after the arrest, police and prosecutors refused to explain. Here's how we figured it out back when we broke the story. Prosecutors got the charges through a grand jury, a confidential, one-sided process. But we confirmed the secret testimony they told jurors, and it is truly unbelievable. To charge as a street gang in Arizona, the law is broad. You just need 2 of the following criteria. And here are the ones that officials say fit this group. They carry umbrellas. They wear mostly black, and they chanted, "All cops are bastards." And for that, officials labeled them the ACAB gang. But here's maybe the most unbelievable part. Court records show the state called a police witness to testify that ACAB was just as dangerous and in many ways more dangerous than notorious gangs like the Crips and the Bloods. The Crips and the Bloods. For reference, it's estimated that those street gangs have committed more than 15,000 homicides, while this group carries umbrellas. Tell me about the umbrella. Did you bring one? Did someone give one to you?
Yeah, I didn't bring one. I was handed one when I got there. I was under the impression it was to protect us from tear gas. And I learned later, apparently, it's also to protect us from people like the alt-right protests or whatever they were following us, because they can dox you, which did happen to me after I was arrested.
Here's a look at the, quote, patriots that were there.
I got it all on film.
They're extremists,
Yeah.
armed, wearing vests. This one, with the Punisher logo, has a criminal record.
Yes, we are, ACP.
During the arrest, when officers order them back, she claims to be press and name drops a connection to a Phoenix cop.
Ask Detective Hillman.
I was sent threatening messages, death threats, sexual assault threats.
Oh, so people threaten to kill you and rape you?
Yes.
But you're the gang member?
Correct.
Once again, a gang member for wearing black, chanting, and carrying an umbrella. This is like bad. Meet alleged gang member Ryder Collins. He didn't do any of those things.
That night in jail, it was just like, any minute now, they're going to be like, well, you can get out of here. You know, clearly you don't know anybody here.
Ryder asked to keep his mask on for this interview to set an example, because he's a nurse from Prescott. He comes down to Phoenix on weekends to shoot photography. It's why he was downtown that night.
We walked around and caught the sunset in downtown. It's really kind of cool because the light will go through the buildings and makes these really cool shadows.
After admiring the shadows, Ryder saw the commotion.
I see this lady with a GoPro camera, and she's filming along the sidewalk, and she's like yelling and screaming at these huddled group of people with umbrellas in the middle of the street.
Get a job, commies!
And I said, oh, okay, and just followed along on the sidewalk with her for a while.
Her video proves it. Ryder's here, holding a camera, not an umbrella. He's not even with the group.
No, I was with her on the sidewalk, following along with my camera.
So how did he get arrested at the end? You're like, what, across the street on the other corner?
Yeah, I'm like the opposite corner, so I'd say at least 150 feet away.
Watch that guy right there. He's with us.
Here to my right, a couple of cops say something like, that's the guy. He's been following the group, get him.
Without evidence, police definitively claimed Ryder was a legal observer for the group, and he and the others face between 8 and 32 years in prison.
I'm sure it's ruined other lives, and then they're attempting to ruin mine, and it's just not right. I didn't do these things that they're charging me with.
Phoenix Police and the Maricopa County Attorney's Office refused interviews throughout our entire investigation. For months, when it came to these arrests, MCAO defended them by issuing similar versions of this statement. While some will attempt to describe these defendants as, quote, protesters, a grand jury found probable cause to charge this group with crimes, including the planning of violence. We will not allow violence to take over our streets. But as you'll see in depth later in this special report, the city at MCAO would eventually admit everything about their case was false. There was no gang or violence or plans of violence. So why say all that? Why bring these charges?
I think they're doing it because they want to silence us. And obviously when you're facing 4 felonies, it can silence you and shut you up pretty quick.
And don't forget the larger context here. This protest, these arrests, came after a very long summer for Phoenix police. And based on what an officer told Amy in custody, she believes that is exactly the goal.
Pulled me aside in a room and said, I heard you talking about your job and it's important to you and you really, seem to like your career. Just so you know, if you keep doing this kind of stuff, you're not gonna have a career anymore. And I was like, is that a threat? And he said, no, I'm just letting you know.
If you're scared, you can just grab my hand.
Cox Home Life, show driveway camera.
Add.
Control your cameras and more with the Contour TV remote and Cox Home Life.
How's everyone doing? Maybe throw in the chat how you're feeling. It's so intense. It's a lot. It's really heavy.
Accidental glass breakage. Perfect if you live on a course with.
It's wild to listen to it, the way that they framed it. This is how a lot of that was recorded back in February when Dave first started this whole thing. So yeah, can you drop in your chat how you're feeling? Thoughts? Where you're at?
Dealerships turn to mundane sales online with impersonal deliveries. Not Sanderson Ford. We chose to work even harder to provide more personalized service and value in our showroom.
Yeah, folks are commenting about the fact that the Maricopa County Attorney's Office statement said we will not allow violence to take over our streets. Thanks for highlighting that, friends.
Outrageous all over, outraged all over again. Triggered, of course, directly impacted folks on the line right now. Seeing their story being told, it's triggering, it's horrific. They are so violent, Helen, you're right about that. If you're watching us on Facebook, drop in the chat there too. We'll do our best to get your chat input mentioned here as well. So drop in the comments how you're feeling. This is a lot.
Call Parker and Sons today.
It's a lot. And it's out, it just goes to show, right, that this was all planned. Here we go. Looks like, oh no, we'll be back in a second. Here we go.
Next to City Hall. And the protesters, falsely charged as gang members, marched right along here at this exact same time of night. Now, after our investigation, the city and the county attorney's office each ordered outside investigations. And if you have any doubt about the legitimacy of those gang charges, let's address that right now. The city hired a major law firm, and MCAO hired a retired judge. Both confirmed everything we reported. There was no gang. ACAB is just a phrase. And the goal? Stop and silence protesters. Now, in order to charge those protesters as part of a made-up gang, police and prosecutors relied on an experienced pair of officials, and you're about to meet them.
Please take the stand.
It's October 31st, 2020, 4 days after Phoenix Police and the Maricopa County Attorney's Office officially got the gang charges from a confidential grand jury. And that case is why we're here in open court. They're trying to keep one of those protesters, Suvarna Ratnam, locked up without bond.
Counsel for the state whenever you're ready. Thank you.
So who's here? It's the same two who presented false testimony to the grand jury.
Good afternoon, Sergeant. Can you please just introduce yourself to the court?
The prosecutor is April Sponsel. The officer on the stand, Sergeant Doug McBride.
I am the Downtown Operations Training Sergeant / Grenadier Sergeant. I am basically in charge of all of the non-lethal grenadier munitions that are deployed during civil unrest.
More simply, he helps run Phoenix's protest response unit.
October 17th of 2020.
Now, the court video is grainy, so here's a clearer look at both. McBride, 26 years with Phoenix, former gang detective, now the protest response unit. And Sponsel, 17 years with MCAO, former gang prosecutor, now with the First Responders Bureau.
ACAB.
And for the next hour and a half, the two laid out their case against an alleged member of a gang that doesn't exist.
We're dealing with this particular defendant as well as ACAB. Do you know where that came from?
We have been dealing with it since May, since these protests started. It was a specific group of individuals that identified themselves as being part of All Cops Are Bastards, or ACAB.
Remember, officials claim the group is a gang for 3 reasons. 1, because they chanted ACAB. 2, they dressed in black. 3, they carried umbrellas.
Umbrella. Have you seen this tactic used in the past?
Yes.
And is this a tactic that's commonly used with regard to this particular group?
Yes, it is.
And when you stated that this is a tactic, what do you mean?
With these particular groups, they try to make it as difficult as possible for us to arrest them. They try every tactic they can to protect each other from the police and inflict as much pain as they can on us.
Sergeant McBride and Prosecutor Sponsel may be the faces in court, but they didn't do this alone. This was not a case of 2 people going rogue. It was planned.
ABC 15 investigator Dave Biskobing now obtaining internal calendar entries that show high-level meetings in the days and weeks before the gang charges.
Records show 4 days before Sponsel and McBride went before a grand jury to get the charges, there was a meeting between MCAO, Phoenix Police, and the FBI. The attendance list, more than 30 people. Here are many of the confirmed names. Highlighted, 3 assistant Phoenix chiefs and an MCAO division chief. Those in attendance would later tell outside investigators the whole point of the meeting was to decide whether to charge the protesters under the gang statute. And not only did they approve, it was discussed and agreed that Sergeant McBride would file a second incident report in order to bolster the gang charges.
In the downtown area.
And as McBride bolstered the case, he would purposefully ignore evidence that didn't fit the gang narrative. Here's the defense attorney on cross-examination.
Now, you said that this group was yelling, "All cops are bastards," during this protest, correct?
Yes.
I watched the video. Didn't they say other things during the time they were walking down the street?
I'm sure they did.
Did you hear them say Black Lives Matter?
Not personally, no.
Okay. Well, did you watch the video with sound on it?
Yes.
Okay. And you didn't hear them say Black Lives Matter during any point of this time they're marching?
They may have. I'm not saying they didn't.
Okay.
I just don't have an independent recollection of them saying.
As for Sponsel, she failed to convince the judge that protester Suvarna Ratnam should stay locked up without bail. But she tried hard and closed her arguments with this.
Frankly, she is a threat to our community. She's a threat to the officers out there in the street. She's a threat to regular, normal members of the community. In a previous occasion where she had an umbrella with a sharpened tip on it sliced the hand of a Phoenix police officer who was trying to arrest. On the date of that offense, she was found with balm-making materials, i.e. acetone, rags, lighters, things that are available for making Molotov cocktails in her possession.
Sharpened umbrella tips, stabbing officers, Molotov cocktails. As you'll see later in indisputable video, none of that was true either. Just lies built on lies, all used to build a fake gang and target protesters.
You know, if you're scared, you can just grab my hand.
Show driveway camera. Control your cameras and more.
So just calling into the space some comments that are coming in from Facebook. Kevin's talking about neo-Nazi gangs have historical support from Phoenix PD. Phoenix PD also has a long history of targeting legal observers. Really important. That is so true. The same tactics, lies, misrepresentations continue every day in other criminal cases. MCAO considers itself to be above the law and ethics. That is real talk. Thank you, Kevin, for sharing that into the Facebook chat. Super important to recognize this is a pattern. And the DOJ is here talking about they don't know whether or not to investigate the MCAO when it has a very evident, very clear pattern and practice of harming our communities, of colluding with PPD, and of lying, outright lies. We got Ria in the chat talking about F April. That's real talk. Oh, here we go. We're back.
Didn't just happen. Abuses against protesters went unchecked and unpunished before, and not just in 2020, but for years. October 17th, 2020. It's the gang case.
It's the City of Phoenix Police Department.
The one synonymous with Phoenix PD and MCAO corruption in protest cases. But now let's go back 2 months. A demonstration in March, a brief standstill, and then this. 8 arrests, more than 70 officers, Bruce Franks Jr. in handcuffs.
None of this is by accident, none of it's by coincidence. This is a strategic plan to silence us.
Bruce is a major voice. He's loud. People listen. He's called the St. Louis Superman, the title of a documentary nominated for an Oscar, profiling his rise from battle rapper to street protester to state lawmaker in Missouri. And it's why he was out leading a march on August 9th.
Every August 9th, it's a remembrance of the tragedy and the murder of Michael Brown. What we do every August 9th, I don't care where I'm at, is we do solidarity actions, protests, march, whatever it is we have to do. And now I live in Arizona.
On August 9th, 2020, Bruce and others would be arrested and charged with a long list of crimes: riot, unlawful assembly, criminal trespass, resisting arrest, and aggravated assault on police.
They literally made up everything. Every single aspect of what they said is not true.
Begin with breaking news tonight.
All the charges dropped after our report.
ABC 15 investigator Dave Biskobing exposing troubling details about the case.
The video evidence we obtained was damning.
See, I got y'all body cameras on.
Police and prosecutors gave clearly false testimony to the grand jury. In one example, they testified that Bruce Franks Jr. and others rushed the police line in a football lineman-style bull rush. No matter how many times you look, that didn't happen. No matter the camera or the angle, officers moved forward. Protesters stood still, and Bruce and other activists constantly claimed they were targeted for arrest, no matter what actually happened.
Jonah Curie and Bruce.
Nice. I got the ones that were the agitators.
Here too?
So you have evidence that says that they singled you out, targeted you?
Absolutely. It's all on camera.
Here's a radio call to officers captured on an officer's body camera off to the side of the building.
Hold the line integrity, push them back, and take those two in front, Bruce Franks and Carrie right there. Take them to the custody in the red shirt. You need to leave. Red shirt, right these two right here. Two in custody, Bruce Franks.
Stop politically prosecuting. Stop these unlawful arrests. Stop the targeting. Stop killing us.
Now let's go back even further, another 2 months.
No probable cause.
When protests erupted in Phoenix following George Floyd's murder.
In fact, the ABC 15 investigators discovered officers used the same copy and paste statement as evidence in a huge batch of cases on Saturday night.
On May 30th, 2020, Phoenix police mass arrested more than 120 people. Officers rounded up crowds and used the same copy and paste statement to justify the arrests. Judges dismissed all those cases.
This time there is no probable cause.
The woman you see here, community activist Maxima Guerrero. I mean, do you think the intent was just to send a message? Don't you come out here anymore?
Definitely. Don't come out here. You're going to be, this is how we're going to treat you. We're going to, inhumanely, and cause and instill that fear.
But again, it wasn't just 2020. Let's go back even further to July 2019. at a candlelight demonstration downtown to protest the federal government separating migrant children. A public defense attorney and Black Lives Matter organizer was arrested for allegedly assaulting a police officer.
And they've lost sight of justice, and they've lost sight of the truth and what's fair. And that's what happened to me, and that's what's happening to other protesters as well.
Video proved Jamar Williams was innocent, but Phoenix police and county prosecutors pushed false charges anyway.
All right, good afternoon, counsel. Is everybody ready?
This is the court hearing to decide whether criminal charges against Jamar should stick.
Your Honor, the state's going to call Officer Barrios.
The prosecutor's only witness, this officer.
Sergeant Gage indicated that he had attempted to take Mr. Williams into custody, and that Mr. Williams had hammer struck him in the chest while he was trying to grab a hold of him to arrest him.
Now, can you please explain to the court what a hammer strike is?
You pretty much take your fist, ball it up, and hit somebody.
Watch that again. The prosecutor asked the officer to demonstrate, and the officer does.
And then what did he? And then what did the defendant?
The defendant was able to pull away and disappear into the crowd.
Except that's not true, and the officer knows it. Watch what happens once Jamar's own defense attorney confronts the officer with cell phone video the prosecution didn't know they had.
That you did learn at some point, either that night or the next morning, that there was a misidentification and Jamar Williams did not strike an officer with his hand.
Correct.
And who was it who did strike an officer with his hand that night?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Police surveillance video, eventually released after this court hearing, shows another man who's white, struggling with officers, then slipping into the crowd. The camera even zooms in and follows him. But about 2 minutes later, a team goes in to arrest Jamar, who's not white, in another part of the crowd.
I want to say there was video that they pulled up or some calls were made. Who made those calls, I'm not sure, but ultimately it came down to Mr. Williams being the wrong person that was arrested.
Okay. Are you aware that I have requested the video from the police and have been told there isn't any video?
I'm not.
Okay.
Is when no one holds them accountable and they do it to one of us, then they know that they can get away with it, so they keep doing it to other people.
Totality of the circumstance.
At the hearing, the judge dismissed all charges.
Does not find probable cause.
And after, no one, no police, no prosecutors, disciplined for what happened.
The county attorney's office isn't going to hold them accountable. No one at the city is going to hold them accountable. No one within the police department is going to hold them accountable. So, of course, they're going to keep doing things that they get away with.
You know, if you're scared, you can just grab.
Intense. That's really intense, y'all. Hita messages us from Facebook saying the audacity of bold-faced lying. I just want to call out that Maxima was a legal observer as well. So that just goes to the previous point made in Facebook. Kathy mentions this is all on camera. A man later identified as Jamar Williams. That's what McBride's police report said. So McBride has just got this long history of lying. He's been out there doing this forever, as Rhea says. Can't imagine what else he's done. Oh, that was Bruce's quote that it's all on camera. Thanks, Kathy. Yeah, this is all really intense. It's really hard to watch. The corruption collusion is deep, and the cops and MCAO feel invincible because how wildly sloppy and brazen that they behaved, even on camera and on the stand. But not surprising, we see what they've been able to be violent at every turn. Steve mentions that McBride's later police report then falsely claims that the actual assailant was Phil Martinez, because they falsely arrested Phil and tried to justify it. Jesus, these people. Okay, we're back.
Investigator now outside Phoenix Police Headquarters. For the past year, we've investigated the department's protest cases, and we've shown how Phoenix and the Maricopa County Attorney's Office colluded to falsely charge protesters as a criminal street gang. We've also shown this wasn't something that came out of nowhere. There were warnings, big warnings, but maybe none bigger than this. Back in 2017, officers shot a protester in the groin and then created a special coin to celebrate. If that's not concerning enough, the coin's language and design had ties to hate speech. It was August 22nd, 2017, when President Trump came to downtown Phoenix.
I won't do it tonight
because I don't want to cause any controversy. Is that okay?
And after, things quickly got out of hand. This video, captured by another TV station, KTVK, became an iconic and lasting memory of the night. The video went viral, and the officers celebrated the shot by buying, selling, and trading this challenge coin. The public didn't know for almost 4 years until we exposed the coin's existence publicly and the design's ties to hate speech. When did you find out that they celebrated shooting you?
It was probably a few months later.
Have you ever seen it before today?
I had never seen it before.
This is Josh Coben. What's it like to see that?
I mean, honestly, it looks pretty unprofessional that Phoenix police would commemorate that.
Our reports caused the city to order an outside investigation by law firm Ballard Spahr. Several officers refused to cooperate. The ones who did claimed they had no idea about the coin's language or where it came from. In the end, the firm could not determine who actually created the coin, but they did find it wasn't just coins, but patches, t-shirts, and other memorabilia. There was even a box full of it in a high-traffic area inside a downtown police station. Like right at that turn. At the spot where it happened, Coben revealed something missing from that viral moment, something hidden from the TV cameras. It's a new angle the public's never seen.
There was a woman who had just stepped barely off the sidewalk into the street. She had turned her back. She was taking a picture and looking at some pictures. The officer who shot me fired a tear gas canister that grazed her on the shoulder. My instincts just kicked in to help her. As me and this other lady grabbed her and ran with her, we got shot in the back by the same officer again as we're fleeing. As soon as I got her to safety, that's when I turned around. I think at that point I was pretty frustrated that I just got shot in the back while helping someone, and that's what provoked me to kick a tear gas canister back at them.
The officer who fired all 3 shots, one at the woman, one at their back, one at his groin, it's Christopher Turiano. He's a, quote, grenadier, or an officer who shoots munitions and gas during protests. He was assigned to protests throughout 2020. Did you know that officer is on the Brady list because he choked a guy who was handcuffed before?
Was not aware of that.
Yeah, 2 other officers reported him for the violence. But you can see in Josh's case, many officers would relish that violence. We confirmed many on the city's protest response team owned souvenirs, including Sergeant Doug McBride, the key officer who testified that protesters were a criminal street gang. Now, we obtained these images from a class action lawsuit against Phoenix police for their response that night. The lawsuit proves Chief Williams knew, but did nothing. Depositions show the chief was questioned about the coin and shown pictures in 2019.
I think the rot starts at the head. If it's something that they're not investigating, then they don't care.
But it wasn't just the protest response team who had the coin. They spread throughout the department.
And then complain because you guys do.
In this video shot a year later by alt-right extremists with Patriot Movement AZ, a uniformed unidentified police sergeant still brags about the coin.
I wanted to
challenge coins for
Yes. Yeah. Really? Awesome. Let's do it live.
They made a challenge where it says good night left.
Good night, left night.
It's that kind of bias outside investigators say contributed to the protest gang charges in 2020. In fact, listen to this body camera video of an accidental recording between 3 officers the night that group was arrested on October 17.
I haven't seen the umbrella tricks yet. That's the umbrella.
So it's new.
That's a new thing.
These officers played a secondary role that night.
Dude, I'm so sick of this. The public is so sick of it too.
Yeah, they are.
There was like, what, 20 to 40 people?
Yeah, if that. They're a bunch of.
We just stomp on them when they were leaving.
Gas them. I don't get. We just gas them and let them run like crazy.
Exactly.
You know,
Just Mark 9 them, gas them, and be done with it.
Then as 2 of the cops drive away, someone on the street yells, "Go home."
Go home. Liberal pieces of. All right, I'm gonna go south.
Dad has sleep.
You know, if you're scared, you can just grab my hand.
Riam points out that Dave is doing a lot of this interviewing right outside of PPD. That's pretty gangster. Good looking out, Dave. Helen's talking about imagine claiming such ignorance. It's so disgusting. That's even a job, Eva Jane says. On Facebook, we have Kevin mentioning Chief Williams is responsible She doesn't care. Let's end qualified immunity and hold them all personally accountable. I bet you they'd change their attitudes then, wouldn't they? Good point, Kevin. Now the guy and the rest of the TRU are reassigned and able to brutalize people at traffic stops. Thanks, City of Phoenix. That's their answer, is reassigning these idiot cops. The rot starts at the head. Good point. F these cops, Sushi says. Yeah, it's just so violent. And they think it's totally okay. The rot starts at the root. These are good messages coming in. Thank y'all for sharing your thoughts and your feelings. Makes me think of of the last statement that the cop on the stand, they make it hard to arrest them and protect each other. It's like they want us to be more violent. As I see the cops be so violent, shooting, gassing protesters, horrified that they're still out there being able to harm people. Real talk. Everybody's seconding that message. Yeah, it's real talk. It's intense to sit here and listen. This is what they think of the community. This is what they believe their job is to do. It's wild. It's really wild. I think we're coming back now.
Until now, we've shown how the gang charges are false. Now we reveal how it happened, step by step, how Phoenix and MCAO invented a gang. Remember Suvarna Ratnam, former Harvard student, activist, and protester.
That is a lie.
To police and prosecutors, Suvarna was the leader of a gang called All Cops Are Bastards, or ACAB.
Frankly, she is a threat to our community.
And the whole profile of Sue has been just outrageous and untrue. They need to stop targeting her, stop harassing her.
Suvarna was in the group, the one arrested on October 17, 2020, and charged as a gang. But ACAB isn't real. It's a fabrication, a lie that began taking root 2 months earlier. It was back on August 23rd, the night of Suvarna's first arrest.
You better stop!
Is this necessary?
During a small protest in downtown Phoenix, she was tackled and taken to the ground. Police say Suvarna took a water bottle and threw it. Then while running away, she took the umbrella in her hand and started to swing it back and forth with force while running toward the police sergeant. Then leveled the umbrella toward the police sergeant and used it as a weapon to stab him in the hand.
I had my head slammed into a lamppost and I was put into a chokehold. So, inflicting that kind of violence on somebody else might have left them with a wound.
Watch it again at half speed. Remember, police say she leveled her umbrella and stabbed the officer. Now, as you watch, know that police also wrote, the umbrella has a 3-inch sharpened metal tip that struck the officer with such force, it bent the metal.
That's absolutely ludicrous. I was holding on to a dollar store umbrella with a plastic tip that I think is impossible to sharpen.
When Suvarna was arrested, they photographed her tattoos. On her wrist, ACAB. Police and prosecutors would also allege she threw a water bottle possibly filled with acetone or nail polish remover, but MCAO and Phoenix would later admit in court they had no proof.
These allegations were always false, and they have admitted in court filings that these are false. She did not sharpen an umbrella. She did not have acetone. She did not put any kind of substance in a bottle.
But all of it, the umbrellas, the stabbing, the tattoos, that would become the foundation upon which ACAB was built. Now, here's the proof, exposed in officers' own emails, texts, chats, and reports. One of the first written records, this email from September 24th, 2020, is from MCAO Investigation Director Tom Van Dorn to Vince Goddard and Sherry LeCrone. They're the two MCAO chiefs who oversaw Sponsel's cases. The email said, Brian Corris is a sergeant in the Homeland Defense Bureau, and he would like to discuss the possibility of building conspiracy and syndicate-type cases as it relates to protest demonstration activists. Then September 28th, Goddard sent an email to MCAO investigator Carl Martin, telling him to investigate the potential for criminal gang and criminal syndicate charges as to groups of protesters. Internal presentations show officials had been gathering intel and identified multiple protesters, leading activists, and community groups. It's how police learned about the protest on October 17th. It ended up being the case to try their plan.
I got some specific instructions for you from April Sponsel of the county attorney's office.
On October 21st, emails clearly lay out their gang theory. They're shared between April Sponsel, Carl Martin, and Vince Goddard at MCAO, and Phoenix officer Jeff Howell. The subject? Take a look at Ratnam for street gang. The final message coming from Sponsel: I agree. This, amazing. 2 days later, on October 23rd, the big meeting we reported earlier. More than 30 officials from MCAO, the FBI, and Phoenix. Remember, not only did they approve, it was discussed and agreed that Sergeant McBride would file a second incident report in order to bolster the gang charges.
It's one thing to disagree with somebody, but it's wholly different to fabricate lies and fabricate evidence and destroy evidence in an effort to prove what's not true.
It's important to really consider something we already showed you. This internal presentation shows Phoenix PD and MCAO identified multiple groups to target with either conspiracy or gang charges or both. That was the plan. ACAB was just the beginning.
You know, if you're scared, you can just grab my hand.
That is sickening, y'all. Sickening. Just going back through some of the comments, talking about Sue. Sue was clotheslined and attacked by 2 cops. They were not obviously swinging that that umbrella back and forth, like said. On Facebook, Kevin said, federal fusion centers have been surveilling and targeting social movements over the last decade. This is true. ACTIC is the federal fusion center, or the fusion center here in Arizona. The Arizona Counterterrorism Information Center, something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, they've been the ones who've been part of this. When you see the FBI all wrapped up in there, and don't forget, the DOJ is here. The FBI are their people, right? DOJ is here. They're not looking. If they don't look everywhere, they're not going to get the whole story. And it's really interesting how they're just turning away. A woman running, men attacking her, and then throwing her around to the ground, and they're still working. Kevin says untold numbers of people are in prison based on the similar lies and misrepresentations, all facts. That's so true. And we need to be pushing for every single case that any one of these people have been involved in, any one of those 30 people on that list, every case. And I don't care if you're federal from the FBI, any case that these people have touched needs to be reopened. All of April Sponsel's cases have got to be reopened. It's just the bottom line. And that's not it. That's no ifs, ands, or buts. These are lying cops and prosecutors. Every case needs to be open. The DOJ is just zooming in, though. Can you forward me that incriminating evidence, please? Yes, that's the DOJ. Here we go. We're back.
Stands out. But what comes next are a few of the most surprising things we discovered. And up first, a secret informant.
Oh, what's going on? Anything going on?
You're listening to a meeting between FBI agents, Phoenix police officers, and an informant.
You all met? We did, yep. Riley?
Riley Behrens was a protester willing to give information on others and activists who organized demonstrations.
You must provide truthful information to the FBI.
This meeting was recorded secretly. It happened on Thursday, October 15th. That's 2 days before the Saturday protest where this group would end up charged as a criminal street gang.
It's all protest or what?
Tonight's Phoenix and Gilbert, tomorrow is Mesa, and there's 2 in Phoenix on Saturday.
Riley was there, arrested, charged like everyone else. The others didn't know Riley was leaking information.
Riley's been giving information to PD through Gilbert PD. Gilbert PD has been spreading that information to Phoenix and Tempe, Mesa, and Gilbert.
It's information police and prosecutors would run with full speed, never checking to see if it was true. The separate outside investigations for Phoenix PD and MCAO would find the problem is Riley Behrens was a patently incredible witness. Behrens has a troubling history of lying to police, even going so far as to fabricate text messages as part of an elaborate sex assault hoax. Now, we don't know why Riley Behrens became an informant, but we did learn before coming to Arizona, Riley had taken steps to become a cop in California. While false information was everywhere in the gang case, maybe the most bizarre is this YouTube video.
Hi everyone, my name is Joy, licensed manicurist, and I want to show you all how to sharpen your fingernails.
This is not a joke. Phoenix Sergeant Doug McBride tried to use this video to back up his false claim that protesters sharpened their nails to attack officers. In front of a confidential grand jury, he testified they utilize a technique where they actually, in some cases, sharpen their fingernails. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but they'll actually put points on them, and they dig them into the back of our knuckles and hands.
Reach in to separate his
Then, in open court, McBride said this.
Where they dig their fingernails in the back of your knuckles and try to disable your fingers and thumb. My particular thumb was affected and damaged.
Booking photos show none of the protesters had sharpened nails. So after our reports blew apart the case, prosecutors asked McBride for evidence to back up his testimony. He sent the video in his response. Here's a video link. That being said, I know it was a video similar to this one. I don't remember whose social media it was found under.
And I'm just going to go downward on the tip just so that it's not dangerously sharp.
I wrote up like now a third discovery we found during our investigation. This is like bad. It involves the arrest of Ryder Collins, the nurse from up north who came downtown to take pictures. He was swept up and falsely charged as part of the gang. And after our initial report on his case, we obtained additional body camera footage of his arrest.
You can hear, right? You heard my commands. Right? And I turned around. So you can hear them tell you need to leave, and you chose not to, so you're going to jail. You've done win them prizes.
When it comes to prizes, the officer you just heard is George Herr. He also had one of the challenge coins. But more importantly, Ryder was across the street, on the opposite corner, nowhere close to the arrests. Now compare that with what happened to these women. They're alt-right extremists, taunting the protest group, cheering the police, walking next to officers.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah!
They were next to Ryder, and actually in the street.
I kind of thought if I was on the street with the lady filming the video that I asked what was going on and I was screaming,
yeah,
antagonizing the protesters, then I wouldn't have been arrested.
The Patriot girls, were they in the street too?
They were out here in the roadway.
So we can tell them.
Anything from the park all the way over here? You want them?
I told them they need to get out of here.
Well, as soon as we told them to get out of the street, they vacated.
Oh, okay.
At the time, one of these, quote, patriots was facing identity theft charges. And less than 3 weeks later, got inside the Maricopa County vote counting building. She wasn't arrested then either. In fact, during the protests after the election, protest gang prosecutor April Sponsel told her bosses, they're the AZ Patriots. There's no concerns with these people at this time. And when it comes to Ryder Collins, he says it shows these protest cases were anything but just or fair.
Now you get to visit 4th Avenue Jail.
And here's one more thing about Ryder's arrest. As officers filled out his paperwork that night, one raised some doubt.
Because this guy wasn't with the group when they hindered, so I don't know if we can charge him with it.
The other then muted his body cam.
You know, if you're scared, you can.
Wild, right? Somebody had a moral compass for a minute there and thought, I don't know if we can do this. And yet they still did it. There's a lot of comments here in the chat. A lot of comments about the DOJ. Well, no, not the DOJ. Just restating some of the stuff that we heard. Moral compass for a while, LOL. How y'all feeling? This is a lot.
I think Sharifa had a question about the last part. Explain that last part to me again. I'm assuming.
I'm not sure what. Can you explain, Sharifa, the question in a little bit more detail? No concern about the patient?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes. So after he gave the fake YouTube video as evidence of people sharpening their nails, then what happened?
They tried to use it as evidence. And then I think it was just debunked like everything else. They tried to use it as evidence that folks were being particularly violent, that they were sharpening their nails. All of that turns out to be a lie.
I know, but the writer guy, the person that was supposed to be their informant or whatever.
No, Ryder was
person.
actually just a photographer. Ryder was just a photographer. Their informant ends up just being a flat out liar. Their informant was somebody who actually turns around and videotapes the times that he's talking to the FBI. When we come back, when they take their next break, we can unpack that a bit further. But that's a great question, Sharifa.
And they said the last
The final part of our special hour-long report, and it's about accountability. Yes, Phoenix and the Maricopa County Attorney's Office hired people to conduct outside investigations, but it was our reporting, followed by intense community pressure, that forced them to do it. This is a city council meeting to present the results of the outside investigation into the gang charges and the challenge coin. It's August 24th this year.
In February, I became aware of the separate issues of gang charges for protesters and challenge coins, and I asked the city attorney to retain the law firm of Ballard Spahr.
What City Manager Ed Zerker didn't say,
Investigator Dave Biskobing,
it was the direct and specific result of our investigation.
the chief knew about it and no one was disciplined.
At first, the investigation was only into the coin. I do appreciate it. We interviewed the city manager about it on February 25th. This coin, right, the chief was shown it in 2019. Pictures of it, she was deposed it, nothing happened. I mean, you're her boss. Is that acceptable?
Well, that's why I have the outside investigation happening, so that I can get the facts surrounding what happened and why, what's the timing, where was the information flow, where did it fall short, and then make decisions based on that information and based on those facts.
Okay, but she knew, so nothing happened. That's why we're here. Does that concern you?
I'm concerned to understand the full context of what happened. I'm concerned with the coins. I'm concerned with the speech on the coins. That's why I brought Ballard Spahr in to do that review.
We asked why he didn't also have the law firm investigate the gang charges. The answer, Zerker wanted to wait for the county attorney's office, which ordered their own outside investigation 3 days before this interview.
I would like to get the information from the county attorney on that.
Well, why not start that now?
I want to get all the information so we can do a thorough review of it.
So those officers will get a nice free pass 4 months until we wait for the county attorney to turn over what they might turn over?
If there's information that we have that any of our officers are lying in something, we'll investigate that.
I've presented plenty of it on my newscast, so I'm surprised that you guys haven't already started investigations, to be quite honest with you. A few hours later, the city called us back to say the law firm would now investigate the gang charges too.
They showed disturbing actions.
And as presented 6 months later in this city council meeting, Ballard Spahr would completely confirm our reporting. Again, the firm found ACAB wasn't real. The evidence, the testimony, the claims of violence, all false. Also, it found in April 2021, at the specific request of Chief Williams, Phoenix's Special Investigations Detail opened an investigation into Sergeant McBride's testimony for possible perjury. Sergeant McBride, who testified under oath, ACAB was a gang, like the Bloods and the Crips, who have sharpened fingernails and umbrellas. The chief's special investigation found no evidence his testimony was perjurious. But those special investigators did not attempt to interview Sergeant McBride at any time or any other Phoenix personnel.
And making sure that I am...
Throughout this year, Chief Williams and the city on her behalf declined ABC 15's interview requests about the protest cases and the coin. But she did finally publicly answer questions from the council.
The filing of gang charges against the demonstrators should have never happened. Systems were bypassed, personnel matters were bypassed, communication was broken down. So it flat out was a bad idea.
The law firm would conclude, we found no suggestion that Chief Williams was told of the decision to charge the protesters as members of a criminal street gang until after the grand jury presentation. But the chief did know after, and nothing happened until our investigation 3 months later.
We will continue our conversation.
No one on the city council or the mayor asked Williams why she didn't step in or press her for failing to investigate the coin years ago.
To keep our officers in a good space.
Instead, several council members spoke about morale or the number of positive police stops or the fact this was considered a problem at all.
This is beyond silly. There was no hate here. There was no nothing.
Critics say that's a lack of leadership that shows why the Department of Justice announced a top-to-bottom pattern of practice investigation on August 5th.
Where we're really focusing on getting things right, recovering from our mistakes, and making sure that I am informed of everything that I need to be informed of without fail.
But this failure doesn't only fall on Phoenix PD. The county attorney's office, run by Alistair Adele, shares at least half the responsibility. The protest cases were handled by MCAO's First Responders Bureau. Adele created that unit in late 2019, almost immediately after being sworn in. The prosecutors were handpicked, including the main one behind the gang charges, April Sponsel. Because of our reports, MCAO also hired an outside investigator, a retired judge named Roland Steinle. His scope was narrow, primarily a document review of policies and practices. He interviewed just 3 people, but did not interview Sponsel or her direct supervisor or the county attorney herself. In the end, the retired judge found prosecutors were biased, and the gang case was at best exaggerated and misleading, and at its worst, a complete work of fiction. He would also say, based on the information given to him, County Attorney Alistair Adele was not briefed prior to the grand jury presentation.
After reviewing these cases,
all year, Adele also refused ABC 15's interview requests.
The current charges.
When she announced MCAO was dropping charges against 12 protesters in this August case, Adele released a video statement, making it look like it was a press conference.
Prohibit me from trying this case in the media.
But the most telling move to avoid questions came on August 12th.
Big story tonight, the Phoenix police chief suspended.
That's the same day Phoenix released the results of their Ballard Spar investigation. It was a lead story on every newscast, on every station. So at 5:52 p.m., Adele's office sent this email with the results of her office's outside probe. Just now, minutes ago, we were already walking on set for the 6 o'clock news. Drop it now in the big shadow of this Phoenix investigation, knowing it's going to suck up all the news coverage, and so that they don't have to answer and face the same level of public scrutiny tonight. And really that shows you why we're in this position in the first place. We have officials like Chief Williams and County Attorney Alistair Adele who are not willing to answer questions, serious questions about the failures of their departments. Chief Williams received a 1-day suspension for the gang charges and a piece of paper or a written reprimand for ignoring the challenge coin. Alistair Adele got nothing. She's an elected official. She answers only to voters. But here's the fallout below them. 3 Phoenix assistant chiefs were demoted. The Phoenix commanders involved will never be allowed to rise to assistant chief. On the protest response team, 1 lieutenant, 3 sergeants, and 9 officers were removed. At least 5 officers are facing criminal investigation. 2 MCAO executives resigned, and Sponsel and her assistant prosecutor remain on leave.
There has been definitely a shaking and reverberation in the Phoenix Police Department. So to whatever degree we can learn, grow, and change, we will. To whatever degree we need to be held accountable, we will be.
But does the public, and do the people falsely charged, actually believe that?
Are you on the line?
During public comment at the meeting, still virtual because of COVID,
Our next speaker is Marisol Leva.
one of the protesters called in. She got 2 minutes.
I am one of the 15 people who was charged as a member of the fictitious ACAB gang. And I've been sitting here listening to this meeting for almost 3 hours, and no one thought to include us in the conversation. I've reached out to the mayor's office, I've reached out to council members, and nobody wanted to give me an opportunity to speak. And it's disrespectful. You are talking about my life, the life of the protesters.
She is a threat to our community.
I lost my job. We have had our mugshots plastered everywhere. I've been doxxed. This has ruined my life. And you're talking about policies.
I go to coffee with a cop.
Liberal pieces of
Worrying about their morale and their workload. What about my fucking life? And the defense that Jerry Williams didn't know anything, how is that even a defense? Shouldn't you know what's going on in your department? She didn't know what was going on with anything, with the coin, with the gang charges. But then when she found out, she did nothing. How does she still have a job?
I'm looking forward to us doing better.
And now you guys want to pretend like you're sorry and this was such a terrible thing that happened? Absolutely not.
No justice! No peace!
We've been telling you, and we've been ignored. It's bullshit.
As was mentioned, and the world knows, I received discipline.
I was looking at 46 years in prison, and you guys are talking about police morale? This is absolutely outrageous. If
Our next speaker.
So now what happens from here? A lot. Here's what we're watching. The DOJ's investigation, expected to last at least a year. In addition to these protest cases, the feds are investigating excessive force, the treatment of homeless in the city, and if Phoenix is capable of policing itself. Also, the current criminal investigations, plus any new ones the DOJ may bring. And lawsuits. There could be a dozen, maybe more. Most from protesters, but also cops and prosecutors who have already sued to stop discipline and further investigation. Bottom line, this is not over. It won't be for a long time. Two of America's biggest law enforcement agencies colluded to create a fake gang, charge protesters, and silence dissent. That's what happened, and that cannot be forgotten. I'm investigator Dave Biskobing. Thank you for watching.
You know, if you're
Woo. That was intense. That was intense, y'all. I think it's time for a deep breath for sure. I want to just read into the space some more of these messages that we've been getting. I think it's really important that people's voices be heard. At one point, there's a message that we missed. Francisco on Facebook Live said it's frustrating. They used vague policies to do whatever they want. I wrote into the chat, look at this fake press conference. It is alarming that the county attorney made a fake press conference so that she could slip into the shadows and not tell the truth about the things that they did. There is no accountability. It is frightening. And it's really pointed to leave on Marissa's message. Marissa's message was heavy. It was real. Yeah. So talking, I think, a bit more. I know that there was some comments about Dave with his hands on his hips talking to Ed Zerker. Ed Zerker just going, I don't know, I'll wait and see, but I'm not going to take accountability, right? And then, yeah, Sushi mentions is that 2 minutes of Marissa's statement was fire, showing what counsel is like, quick to cut people off. Yeah, it's a lot. DOJ wants law enforcement to silently be racist like it was intended to be. That's right, Kevin, on Facebook. Phoenix police are calling liberals names while they got liberals defending them on city council. Fake is the only thing Adele knows. The lying never stops. She must be recalled. It's horrific. I do want to call attention just really quickly. We have folks on the city council who, when Ed Zerker says that I only came to know about this in February, that is an outright lie. There are people on this call who were at those subcommittee meetings and at the regular city council meetings demanding that they put this on the agenda. Ed Zerker was there. He was aware. It's just an outright lie to say that they didn't find out about this till February, nearly a year after these cases took place. It's just a lie. And Ed Zerker has retired early as a result of the organizing that has pushed him out. Two of those prosecutors who were sending those emails are gone. The prosecutor who is responsible for all of this is on leave, and now she's suing because she knows that the rest of them were all involved. And she says, I'm not going to be the only one. You're not going to scapegoat me. So now we've got the prosecutors doing this. It was him. No, it was me. It was you know, and so now they're pointing at each other. It's just a mess, and it is a circus. But we also need to recognize that we have a so-called police accountability candidate on our city council, Carlos Garcia, who we literally had phone calls with and told him about this. We organized him on the side to tell him, go in there and bust down the door and get these things on the agenda. When we did our citizens petitions that demanded that Ed Zerker be fired, he wouldn't read them aloud. He voted so that they could get reimbursed for riots that never happened. This is our so-called police accountability candidate. And we're saying it because people need to hear it. He needs to get his act. He's a vice mayor, and you cannot ever wonder why Sal DeCiccio wanted him appointed as vice mayor. How was that unanimous? How? Because you're selling our people by getting over on our people, saying that you want to hold police accountable, and then meanwhile funding them behind closed doors. We're not. We see you. Get it together. Fix it. Stop doing that. We know what you're doing, and we are not going to be quiet about it. Yeah, there's folks on Facebook still commenting. We have the Alistair is sick and gets to keep all of this in the shadows. Hita says it's disgusting, disgusting, disgusting. And they had no problem on shutting her off after her 2 minutes were up, speaking about Marissa's statement. Helen says, I wish he left without pay, without cushy retirement. We can still work on that, y'all. That is not off the table. Alex puts in the Facebook chat a link to ACTIC. All of us here on the Zoom have it now, so definitely brush up on ACTIC. They are not a joke. They are behind a lot of this. $60 million in CARES funding for riots that never happened, Chelsea reminds us. And on Facebook, we have a commenter, Chona, who says, why don't they get time for their actual crimes? You know, it's an interesting point. As abolitionists don't ever call for prosecution, but it is unfair to hold our people to a double standard. If anybody lied and colluded and schemed and created a conspiracy to harm a massive group of people, don't you know that they would quickly throw all of us into a cage? So it's really fascinating how those same standards do not apply. And then just talking about going after the Ed Zerker's retirement, Helen says in the chat, let's make it happen. I say, let's go. Let's go. We're wondering if anybody knows, anybody out there in the legal community, anybody who's watching this, if anybody knows who those 5 cops who are under criminal investigation, who they are, please drop it into our chat. Please send it into our messenger. We're trying to figure that out too. It is important to know. It won't take long for us to find it, but if anybody knows off the top of their head, please share that with us. Any other comments before we get into our debrief? It's late. I know it's late. Folks need to go to bed, need to get back to their lives, want to work us through a quick detox. Any other questions before we go? I'm checking on Facebook. I'm checking. All right. I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Rosalind, who is going to take us through a debrief, not a debrief, a detox to help us to kind of center ourselves as we just process what we just saw. Over to you, Ms. Rosalind.
Thank you so much, Lola. And thank you so much, family, for being here with us. You know, depending on the situation, our breath, it either speeds up and it's really shallow to prepare our bodies for fight or flight. And sometimes the stress is so high, we just stop breathing. We just hold our breath. And that's kind of been my experience tonight. I've just clenched and I've just been on edge, holding my breath. And so I would like all of us collectively to just center ourselves, put our feet on the floor. You know, maybe we can give our hands a little warm rub, but we want to love on us right now and really take some intentional, centered, deep breathing. And let's go in, because I've been truly clenching. Don't know what you've been doing, but I've been holding on to it. So let's go in for a deep one. At the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Let's take it in. Deep, deep, deep. And slowly release through a purse lip. Let's go in again. Take it in as deep. And let's release slow, cleansing breath. Oh my goodness. And let's do it together one more time. In through our nose. And out through our mouths. And you know, we all deserve a hug tonight. So let's give it a good forward stretch. And let's take our arms and just give ourselves a great big hug, saying we continue to fight collectively, we continue to hold each other, and we hold ourselves accountable as a gift. And that's why we do this fight, because we are holding those who harm us accountable. Thank you all for being present. Thank you all for putting on the gloves and continuing to stay in the ring. Together we win. Good night, all. Good to see you, Will.
You too, fam. I love you all.
Throw it up, family. Love, love, love. Yes.
Thank you so much for that, Miss Roz. We want everybody to know that we do have 2 upcoming events on the 20th, next Monday, a week from today, from 6 to 8 p.m. We have an in-person event. Let's Talk Abolition. We are talking recall, reclaim, and reimagine. And then the following Thursday, on September 30th, we have a virtual event for the same topic. So you can come to one or both of those. Please grab the link from the chat, register, tell your friends and family, share that out on Facebook. We want everyone in the Maricopa County to know exactly what is going on with Alistair Adele and to make sure that she is held accountable. And that is our work that we absolutely can do together. So join us at those 2 events coming up on the 20th and the 30th and share with all of your friends. Thank you, Miss Roz, for that detox. Thank you, Lola, for hosting us and giving all that context. And we'll close out. Lola, did you want to share any more before we move out tonight?
Folks are already logging off. It's that time.
Perfect.
Head on out, head to bed. We got work to do tomorrow. We'll be talking about what's next. Thank y'all. Thank you. Thank you. Close down Facebook.